The HFY Empire stretched across 23 conquered star systems like a cancer eating through the galaxy. For 3,000 years, no species had survived their first contact. Their warriors stood 12 feet tall, with armored skin that could deflect laser fire and claws that could tear through steel. When they spoke, their voices carried the weight of countless dead civilizations. Commander Velthar floated in his bioship's neural interface chamber, connected directly to the vessel's living consciousness. The ship itself was a marvel of organic engineering, a massive creature bred for war, its hull breathing with each pulse of its enormous heart. Weapon pods lined its sides like infected wounds, each capable of turning entire cities to glass. Through the ship's sensory organs, he studied the third planet orbiting the small yellow star. Earth looked so peaceful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Velthar had seen thousands of worlds like this before their conquest. The planet's inhabitants called themselves humans, and their technology readings were laughably primitive. Chemical rockets, nuclear weapons, metal projectiles fired by explosive powder. The HFY had abandoned such crude methods when most stars were young. His tactical display showed human military installations scattered across the continents, small bases with obsolete radar systems, floating vessels they called aircraft, carriers that looked like toys compared to a single HFY bioship. Their largest cities contained millions of inhabitants packed into structures that would collapse under the lightest plasma bombardment. 800 light-years away on Earth, Lieutenant G1 Park sat in NORAD's deep underground command center, watching nightmare scenarios unfold across her monitors. The alien fleet had appeared suddenly at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago. 200 massive vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved without visible propulsion, gliding through space like living things. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Their surfaces rippled with organic patterns, pulsing with bioluminescent veins that carried energy throughout their hulls. Weapon emplacements opened and closed like breathing organisms. These weren't machines. They were creatures engineered for destruction. Jiwon's hands trembled as she updated the threat assessment. Earth's entire nuclear arsenal couldn't scratch the paint on one of those bioships. The aliens possessed technology that made human weapons look like stone axes. Yet something in her military training refused to accept defeat before the battle began. The alien broadcast came simultaneously to every communication device on Earth. Television screens, radio stations, cell phones, even primitive emergency systems all carried the same message in perfect human languages. Commander Veltar's image appeared everywhere, his insectoid features radiating cold intelligence. "Inhabitants of the third planet," his translated voice boomed across 7 billion devices. "I am Commander Velthar of the HFY Empire. Your species has been selected for integration into our domain. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will demonstrate why 23 civilizations chose submission over extinction." Within hours, the demonstration began. Tokyo disappeared first, consumed by a beam of pure energy that lasted 3 seconds. The city simply wasn't there anymore. Buildings, people, culture, history, all reduced to a perfectly circular crater of fused glass. London followed 30 minutes later, then New York. Each destruction was broadcast live across the planet, ensuring maximum psychological impact. Seojun Kim stood in the newly established Global Defense Command Center, built hastily in the Swiss Alps. As Earth's unified defense coordinator, he watched the casualty reports streaming in. 15 million people dead in one morning. The aliens hadn't even landed troops yet. Every military advisor in the room expected him to authorize surrender negotiations. That's what rational species did when faced with overwhelming force. That's what the previous 23 civilizations had done. But as Seojun studied the tactical displays, he noticed something the aliens might have missed. The energy beams that destroyed the cities were precise, surgical. The aliens could have cracked continents or boiled oceans, but they chose limited strikes. They wanted Earth intact. They needed something here: resources, slaves, or strategic position. That need was a weakness. Dawn broke over major population centers as HFY drop pods screamed through the atmosphere. Each pod was another living creature, its surface burning away during entry, to reveal armored soldiers within. They expected to find terrified civilians fleeing in panic, begging for mercy that would never come. Instead, they found Minho Lee crouched behind an overturned car in Seoul, holding a hunting rifle he'd never expected to fire at aliens. The HFY warrior that emerged from the nearest pod stood twice his height, its chitinous armor gleaming with protective slime. When it spotted Minho, the alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. The creature raised its plasma weapon, confident in another easy kill. Minho pulled his trigger. The primitive bullet shouldn't have penetrated HFY armor, but it struck perfectly between two plates, finding the soft joint underneath. Green blood sprayed across the street as the warrior staggered. Similar scenes played out worldwide. In Mumbai, Hyung Choi led her apartment building's residents in an ambush against alien soldiers. In Cairo, construction workers used heavy equipment to crush drop pods before they could open. The HFY had expected fear and found fury instead. Commander Velthar received the first casualty reports with disbelief. Humans were actually fighting back, not just military forces but civilians. Children threw stones at his warriors. Elderly, humans fired ancient weapons from windows. This had never happened before in 3 millennia of conquest. The apex predators of the galaxy had encountered something unprecedented, a species that refused to accept their place as prey. 3 months after the invasion began, the HFY controlled every major city on Earth, but victory felt strangely hollow. Their bioships hovered over population centers like sleeping giants, pulsing with organic light that painted the streets below in eerie colors. Alien patrols marched through empty boulevards, their heavy footsteps echoing off abandoned buildings. Yet something was wrong. Commander Velthar studied the casualty reports in his neural interface chamber. His forces should have been processing human slaves by now, stripping Earth's resources, while the broken population served their new masters. Instead, his soldiers died daily from attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. Hidden snipers picked off isolated patrols. Explosive devices destroyed supply convoys. Communication relays went offline without explanation. Deep beneath the ruins of Seoul, former Marine Taehyun Yoon crouched in a maintenance tunnel, watching alien patrol routes through a periscope he'd built from salvaged materials. The underground. Resistance had grown from scattered survivors into a coordinated network that stretched across continents. Every major city had become a maze of hidden tunnels, secret passages, and concealed weapons caches. Taehyun's tactical display showed enemy positions throughout the sector. The HFY followed predictable patterns, their rigid military hierarchy making them vulnerable to guerrilla tactics. They expected conquered populations to remain visible and submissive. They'd never faced an enemy that melted into shadows and struck from underground. His radio crackled softly. "Team 7 in position," whispered Young Ho Kim from a drainage pipe beneath the alien command post. "Ready to plant charges on their power conduits. Team 3 has visual on supply convoy," reported Minji Seo from her sniper nest in a collapsed building. 6 biomechs, minimal escort. They're getting careless. The aliens had learned to fear human weapons, but they still didn't understand human thinking. Each attack taught the resistance more about HFY weaknesses. Their armor was strong, but had gaps at the joints. Their energy weapons needed time to recharge. Their bioships required specific atmospheric conditions to remain healthy. Most importantly, the HFY were creatures of habit. They'd conquered so many worlds using the same tactics that they couldn't adapt to creative resistance. When humans didn't follow the standard script of broken civilization, the aliens kept trying to force familiar patterns that no longer worked. 50 kilometers away, Dr. Suyung Han worked by candlelight in her hidden laboratory, surrounded by dissection tables holding pieces of dead HFY soldiers. The underground facility had been a subway maintenance depot before the invasion. Now it served as humanity's most important research center. Her latest specimen lay on the central table, a warrior that had died when human fighters overran an alien patrol. The creature's armor looked impenetrable, its chitinous surface reflecting, her lamplight like polished metal, but 3 months of careful study had revealed the truth hidden beneath that imposing exterior. So-young adjusted her microscope and smiled grimly. The HFY armor contained living organisms that maintained its defensive properties. These microscopic creatures were vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies, wavelengths that disrupted their cellular structure and caused the armor to become brittle. She activated her prototype weapon, a device built from salvaged electronics and jury-rigged components. The electromagnetic pulse was invisible and silent, but its effect on the armor sample was immediate. The seemingly invincible material cracked and crumbled like old concrete. Within hours, her discovery spread through the resistance network. Every human cell received instructions for building these electromagnetic disruptors from common electronic parts. Television circuits, radio components, even cell phone batteries could be modified to generate the right frequency. The HFY learned about humanity's breakthrough during their next patrol sweep. Alien soldiers advanced confidently through the ruins of downtown Toronto, their armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. Hidden resistance fighters activated their homemade weapons simultaneously. The electromagnetic pulse washed over the patrol, like an invisible wave. Suddenly, armor that had deflected anti-tank rounds became as fragile as eggshells. Human fighters emerged from concealment, overwhelming the confused aliens with conventional weapons that could now penetrate their defenses. But the real game-changer came from an unlikely source. Engineer Jihoon Bae had been studying a damaged HFY communication device for weeks in his underground workshop. The alien technology was completely different from human electronics, grown rather than built, with organic circuits that pulsed like living tissue. Most engineers would have given up, but Jihoon had always excelled at impossible puzzles. He traced the device's bio-neural pathways, mapping connections that followed organic patterns rather than digital logic. Slowly, he began to understand how HFY technology thought. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning when he successfully activated the alien communicator. Suddenly, his workshop filled with chittering voices, speaking in the HFY language. He was listening to enemy battle communications in real time. Within days, human hackers across the globe were intercepting alien transmissions. They learned patrol schedules, supply routes, and command decisions hours before implementation. The resistance began predicting HFY movements with uncanny accuracy, always staying one step ahead of their hunters. More impressively, human tech specialists began inserting false information into alien communication networks. HFY patrols received orders sending them to empty locations, while real human operations proceeded elsewhere. Supply convoys were redirected into ambushes. Command posts lost contact with their subordinates at critical moments. The psychological effect was devastating. HFY soldiers began doubting their own communication systems. Commanders questioned orders that might be human deceptions. The rigid military hierarchy that had conquered 23 civilizations started breaking down under the weight of constant uncertainty. Commander Velthar floated in his bioship's neural chamber, connected to reports from across the planet. His tactical displays showed a pattern that chilled his alien blood. Human resistance wasn't just surviving, it was evolving. Every HFY weapon, tactic, and technology was being studied, understood, and improved by minds that seemed to thrive on impossible challenges. His species had spent millennia perfecting their tools of conquest. Humans were mastering them in months. The apex predators of the galaxy were learning what it felt like to become the hunted. Captain Eunji Seo felt the alien bio-ship respond to her thoughts like a living extension of her own body. The vessel's organic hull rippled around her as she guided it through Saturn's asteroid belt, weaving between spinning rocks that would have destroyed any human-built spacecraft. But this wasn't a human ship anymore. It was something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. The bioship had been captured 6 months ago when human fighters overran a HFY landing zone outside Mumbai. The alien crew had fought to the death rather than surrender, but they'd left behind their greatest weapon. Engineer Wonho Jung and his team had spent weeks learning how to communicate with the living vessel, discovering that HFY ships weren't piloted, they were partnered with. The ship's bio-neural network pulsed with alien memories of conquest and destruction. Yunji could feel echoes of the civilizations this vessel had helped destroy, their final moments burned into its organic consciousness. But now those same neural pathways carried human thoughts, human determination and human ingenuity. "Target acquired," she whispered into her throat microphone. Through the ship's sensory organs, she could see the HFY supply depot clinging to Titan's methane-rich surface. The facility looked like a massive tumor growing from the moon's frozen landscape, its biomechanical structures breathing slowly in the thin atmosphere. Her strike team consisted of 12 other captured alien ships, each one piloted by humans who had learned to think like their vessels. The learning process had been brutal. Several pilots had died when their minds couldn't handle the alien neural interface. But those who survived became something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans who could think and fight like HFY. Behind her, Lieutenant Chanwu Park piloted a smaller scout vessel that moved through space like a hunting predator. "Perimeter sensors are down," he reported. "Whatever Yuna's people did to their communication network is working perfectly." On Earth's surface, Dr. Yuna Kang sat in her underground laboratory, surrounded by screens showing HFY neural patterns. She'd discovered something that horrified the aliens. Humans could not only interface with their biotechnology, but actually improve it. The mind control parasites the HFY used to dominate other species had become humanity's greatest intelligence weapon. The parasites were designed to suppress independent thought and enforce obedience. But human brains worked differently than other species the HFY had conquered. Instead of being controlled, humans learned to control the parasites themselves, turning them into biological computers that could hack directly into alien command networks. Yuna's neural interface crown looked like something from a nightmare, organic tendrils that connected her brain to modified HFY parasites. Through this horrifying merger of human intelligence and alien biotechnology, she could access every communication channel in the enemy fleet. "Supply convoy Alpha 7 is being redirected to Sector 12, she whispered into her headset, feeding false orders directly into the HFY command structure. "Defense grid Beta is powering down for maintenance cycle." The aliens receiving these orders had no reason to doubt them. The commands came through their own secure channels, using proper authorization codes and biological signatures. They couldn't imagine that their own parasites had been turned against them by the species they'd tried to enslave. Squad leader Min-seok-oh materialized in a flash of purple light inside a HFY bunker beneath the ruins of Moscow. The alien teleportation technology had been another gift from their enemies. Transportation devices that could move human soldiers instantly across continents. What had taken the HFY centuries to develop, humans mastered in months. His assault team appeared around him like ghosts, emerging from the alien transport matrix with weapons ready. The HFY soldiers guarding the facility barely had time to register the intrusion before electromagnetic pulses disabled their armor and human weapons finished the job. "Sector 7 secured," Min-seok reported as his team began downloading data from the alien computers. Moving to next objective, another flash of light, and his squad vanished, reappearing halfway around the world in a facility beneath the Australian outback. The HFY had built their command network, assuming they would always control the transportation systems. They never imagined humans learning to use their own infrastructure against them. Across 6 continents, similar operations proceeded simultaneously. Human forces struck HFY installations with precision that seemed impossible, always knowing exactly where to hit and when. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that appeared to be everywhere at once, coordinating attacks across impossible distances. But the real shock came when Captain Yunji's strike force reached the Titan supply depot. The facility's biomechanical defenses activated automatically, launching swarms of living missiles that sought heat signatures and electromagnetic emissions. These weapons had never failed against conventional spacecraft. They'd never faced ships that could think. Yunji's bioship twisted through the missile swarm like a dancer, its living hull predicting the weapons' movements before they fired. The vessel's own defensive systems had been modified by human engineers who understood both alien biotechnology and human tactical thinking. "All units, weapons free," Yunji commanded, as her strike team spread into attack formation. The human-modified bioships opened fire with plasma cannons that burned brighter and hotter than their original specifications. Wonho Jung's engineering team had discovered that Kethvar weapons were designed for efficiency rather than maximum power. Humans had no such limitations. The supply depot's shields collapsed under the bombardment, its biomechanical structures writhing as they died. Storage tanks containing resources looted from conquered worlds exploded in brilliant fireballs that lit up Titan's methane atmosphere. But this wasn't just a raid. It was a message. As the facility burned, Yunji's ships transmitted a signal across all Kethvar communication channels. The broadcast was simple, but terrifying. Human voices speaking in perfect Kethvar language, using the aliens' own words of conquest. "Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will demonstrate why you should never have come to Earth." For the first time in 3,000 years of galactic conquest, the Kethvar Empire faced an enemy that had learned to use their own weapons, their own tactics, and their own words against them. The apex predators of the galaxy were discovering what it felt like to become the prey. Human ships began appearing in star systems that had been Kethvar territory for centuries, striking military installations with impossible precision. The hunters had become the hunted, and their pursuers were learning faster than any species in galactic history. The war was no longer about Earth's survival. It had become about the Kethvar Empire's destruction. Admiral Heon Lim stood on the bridge of the warship Defiance, watching star clusters wheel past through the vessel's organic viewing membranes. The ship itself was a masterpiece of human engineering, merged with alien biotechnology, part grown, part built, completely unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull breathed with modified Kethvar tissue, while human-designed weapon systems pulsed beneath its living armor. The bridge around her buzzed with activity, as officers from a dozen Earth nations worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the face of galactic war. Navigation Officer Hyun-Woo Kim plotted jump coordinates using alien biocomputers that had been rewired to think like human tactical systems. Communications Specialist Ji-yeon Park monitored 17 different star systems simultaneously, coordinating attacks across impossible distances. "Admiral," called out Tactical Officer Seung-ho Lee, his voice tight with excitement, "we're receiving confirmation from Strike Group 7. The Proxima Centauri supply base has been neutralized. No human casualties." Heyoon nodded grimly. 6 months. Thargo humanity had never traveled beyond their own solar system. Now human forces were striking targets deep in Kethvar space, using the aliens' own transportation networks against them. The irony wasn't lost on her. The empire that had conquered 23 civilizations was being destroyed by their own technology. The Defiance shuddered slightly as it dropped out of biospace near the Kepler 442 system. Through the viewing membrane, Heyon could see the Kethvar military installation that had been built on the system's 4th planet. The fortress looked like a massive infected wound on the planet's surface, its biomechanical structures pulsing with malevolent life. "Target is heavily defended," reported sensor operator Subin Choi. 47 bioships in defensive formation, plus surface-to-space weaponry that could level a continent. Under normal circumstances, attacking such a fortified position would be suicide. But these weren't normal circumstances, and humans had learned to turn Kethvar's strengths into weaknesses. Engineer Jae-hyun Park's voice crackled through the ship's communication system from his laboratory, deep in the vessel's biomechanical heart. "Admiral, the conversion virus is ready for deployment. Once we release it into their defense network, their own bioships will start attacking each other." The conversion virus had been Jae-hyun's masterpiece, a piece of biological programming that could rewrite the neural patterns of Kethvar bioships. The aliens had designed their vessels to be absolutely loyal to their empire. Humans had found a way to make them absolutely loyal to humanity instead. "All ships, prepare for viral." "Deployment," Heyon commanded. Around the Defiance, 23 other human vessels decloaked simultaneously. Each ship was unique, combining human innovation with captured alien technology in ways that should have been impossible. The HFY defenders reacted immediately, their bioships moving to intercept like antibodies attacking an infection, energy weapons charged and fired, filling space with deadly light. But the human ships moved differently than anything the aliens had faced before, sometimes like machines, sometimes like living creatures, always unpredictably. Captain Dongmin Yu piloted his converted bioship through the enemy formation like he was dancing, using movement patterns he'd learned from studying Earth's marine life. His vessel twisted and spiraled through plasma bursts that should have vaporized it, while returning fire with weapons that had been upgraded beyond their original specifications. The conversion virus spread through the HFY defense network like wildfire. One by one, alien bioships began turning on their own fleet, their neural patterns rewritten by human programming. What had been a coordinated defense became chaos as HFY vessels attacked each other with the same ferocity they'd once used against their enemies. Light years away on the HFY homeworld, Commander Velthar stood in his species' ancient war chamber, watching disaster reports flood in from across the Empire. The holographic display showed 17 colonies under simultaneous attack, their defenses crumbling as human forces used HFY technology better than its creators. "How is this possible?" chittered Sub-Commander Zalketh, his mandibles clicking with distress. "These humans have existed in space for less than one of their years. We have conquered for 3 millennia. Velthar studied the tactical data with growing horror. Human forces were using strategies that combined primitive Earth warfare with advanced alien technology. They fought like ancient human generals, Sun Tzu, Alexander, Napoleon, but with weapons that could crack planets. On the Rigel Prime colony, Colonel Kyungmin Song led human ground forces in an assault that perfectly demonstrated this hybrid approach. His troops advanced using ancient pincer movements and flanking maneuvers, but they teleported instantly between positions and fired weapons that could melt HFY armor. "Echo Company, hold position and draw their fire," Kyungmin commanded through his bio-neural communicator. "Delta Company, teleport to coordinates 77 Alpha and hit them from behind." The HFY defenders had never faced such tactics. Their rigid military doctrine assumed enemies would attack directly, using overwhelming force against prepared positions. Human forces appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking where least expected and vanishing before counterattacks could be organized. Major Hyejin Nam's assault team materialized behind HFY lines, using alien transportation technology to bypass the colony's main defenses. Her soldiers carried weapons that looked like ancient Earth rifles, but fired plasma that could burn through biomechanical armor like paper. The psychological effect was devastating. HFY soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves outfought by a species they'd considered primitive. Their ancient confidence cracked as human tactics evolved faster than they could adapt. "Sir," reported intelligence officer Young Min Ko from his position in the Defiance's bio-neural center, "we're intercepting panic transmissions from across HFY space. Their high command is requesting emergency reinforcements from all sectors." Heian smiled coldly. The aliens were finally learning what every conquered species had felt: helpless terror in the face of overwhelming force. But, unlike their previous victims, humans had turned that terror into fuel for innovation. "Patch me through to all human forces," she commanded. Her image appeared on screens throughout the growing human fleet, in underground bases on Earth and in captured installations across HFY space. "Today we prove that humanity will never kneel," she declared. "Every world they've conquered, every species they've enslaved, every act of cruelty in their empire's history, we will answer for it all. The HFY wanted to teach us about warfare. Let's show them what we've learned." The response came from 1,000 human voices across a dozen star systems. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone they've destroyed. The Galactic War had begun in earnest, and the hunters were learning what it meant to become the hunted by a species that improved with every battle. Commander Velthar's flagship hung in space like a dying whale, its biomechanical hull cracked, and bleeding luminescent fluid into the void. Emergency lights flickered throughout the bridge as life support systems struggled to maintain atmosphere. Around him, the last remnants of the once mighty HFY War fleet drifted helplessly, surrounded by sleek human vessels that moved through space like hunting sharks. The irony was crushing. 2 years ago, he had gazed down at Earth from this same bridge, dismissing humanity as another primitive species ripe for conquest. Now his empire lay in ruins, 23 star systems liberated by the very creatures he'd tried to enslave. The humans hadn't just defeated the HFY, they'd absorbed their technology, improved it and turned it into weapons of unprecedented power. Through his damaged viewscreen, Velthar watched the human flagship approach. The vessel was beautiful and terrible, its hull a seamless blend of organic HFY biotechnology and angular human engineering. Weapon ports lined its sides like predator teeth, each one capable of cracking a moon. But what disturbed him most was how alive the ship looked, as if humanity had taught alien technology to think like them. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," croaked his communications officer, her voice barely audible through damaged vocal cords. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the face of Admiral Heon Lim. The human woman looked exactly like what she was, a predator who had learned to hunt apex predators. Her eyes held no hatred, no anger, just the cold calculation of someone who had mastered warfare beyond his species' comprehension. "Commander Velthar," she said in perfect HFY language, "your empire has fallen. Your colonies have been liberated. Your enslaved populations are free. Do you wish to discuss surrender terms, or shall we demonstrate what human mercy looks like when pushed too far?" The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Velthar had seen human mercy in action. Entire HFY battle groups converted to serve humanity, their bioships reprogrammed to fight for their former enemies. Some fates were worse than death. On the neutral space station, where surrender, negotiations took place, General Do-Yun Cho sat across from what remained of the HFY High Command. The aliens looked broken, their once proud carapaces dulled and cracked with stress. Around the conference table sat representatives from a dozen species, former HFY slaves who had been liberated by human forces. The Zephyrians, whose crystal cities had been strip-mined by the Empire, watched the proceedings with compound eyes that reflected rainbow patterns of satisfaction. The Mollusk Confederation, whose oceanic worlds had been drained for HFY bioships, pulsed their tentacles in rhythms that conveyed deep contentment. Every enslaved civilization was represented, their freedom purchased by human blood and ingenuity. "The terms are simple," General Cho said, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had learned to make the impossible routine. "Complete withdrawal from all human space, including our solar system and a 50-light-year buffer zone. Full reparations for the damage caused to Earth, 3 major cities, and 15 million lives. The immediate release of all enslaved populations throughout former HFY territory." Sub-Commander Zalketh's mandibles clicked nervously. "These terms are surprisingly merciful. We expected complete extermination." "We're not you," Cho replied simply. "We don't destroy species for the pleasure of it. But make no mistake, this mercy comes with a price. Any future aggression against humanity or our allies will result in the complete elimination of your species. We've proven we have the capability." The demonstration had come 3 days earlier, when human forces destroyed the HFY fortress moon of Xerion Prime. The moon hadn't been attacked with conventional weapons. Instead, human biotechnology specialists had introduced a virus that caused the entire structure to devour itself from within. In 6 hours, a military installation the size of Earth's moon had simply ceased to exist. Ambassador Sumin Nam stood to deliver humanity's final statement. Her words were broadcast across every communication network in known space, carried by quantum transmitters to civilizations that had never heard of Earth until humans started liberating HFY colonies. "For 3,000 years, the HFY Empire spread across the galaxy like a cancer," she began, her voice carrying the weight of history. "They conquered 23 civilizations, enslaved billions of beings, and believed themselves the apex predators of space. They saw humanity and thought we would be easy prey." The holographic display behind her showed images of Earth before and after the invasion. Beautiful cities turned to glass craters, then rebuilt stronger than before. Human vessels moved through space, using technology that made original HFY designs look primitive. We sought only to be left in peace, Sumin continued. We never wanted to become warriors, but you forced us to learn warfare, and we learned it better than you ever imagined possible. We took your weapons and made them stronger. We took your ships and made them faster. We took your biotechnology and made it serve life instead of death. The message resonated across the galaxy like a shockwave. Species that had never considered challenging galactic powers suddenly saw hope. Others that had harbored aggressive intentions toward younger civilizations quietly reconsidered their plans. 10. Years later, Dr. Jisoo Kim worked in her laboratory, aboard humanity's newest research vessel, the Prometheus. The ship existed in a dimension slightly adjacent to normal space, using technology that combined human quantum physics with HFY bioengineering and principles learned from 6 other liberated species. Her current project involved weapons, systems that existed only in theoretical mathematics, devices that could rewrite the fundamental forces of physics within localized areas. The research was classified beyond top secret, known only to a handful of scientists and military leaders, but rumors of humanity's continuing innovation spread throughout the galaxy like whispers in the dark. Dr. Kim called her assistant, technician Woo-Young Seo. We're receiving another diplomatic request from the hegemony. They want to open formal relations with Earth. Jisoo smiled without looking up from her work. The hegemony controlled 47 star systems and had been known for their aggressive expansion policies. 6 months ago, they'd been positioning forces near human space. Now they wanted to be friends. Standard response, she said. Humanity welcomes peaceful contact with all species. We're always happy to share our knowledge with those who come in friendship. The unspoken message was clear, and those who come in war will discover what we've learned since the HFY made that mistake. On the former HFY homeworld, now a nature preserve administered by the liberated Zephyrian Collective, a simple memorial stood in what had once been the Empire's capital city. The inscription was carved in human Korean, but translated into every known galactic language. Never again underestimate those who fight for their home. The memorial attracted visitors from across the galaxy. Diplomats, military leaders, researchers, and tourists. They came to see the place where the most feared empire in galactic history had learned a simple truth. Humanity might prefer peace, but they excelled at war, and that excellence made them the most dangerous species in the known universe. The end.